This clip is brought to you by 8 Sleep Mattresses, the temperature-controlled Tesla of beds that automates your sleep. Sleep better and enjoy this clip.
We talked about recovery a bunch. We talked about sleep. We talked about your heart rate and all these different tools and things. What have you noticed in terms of your food? Have you personally noticed any changes in the way that you deal with stress when you eat better or anything like that?
Well, what does stress do, right? Stress makes you want to eat shitty food. One of the things that brings the sympathetic nervous system down is shitty food, basically. There's a reason that when we get stressed out, we eat poorly. So conversely, it's true, though, by eating healthier foods, we can help our body.
What do you think the mechanism is that might trigger that?
It has to do with glucocorticoids and stress response and cortisol and all these things. We try to drive those things down by eating. It's just a reaction.
Like literally a comfort food, huh?
It's a real thing, yeah.
Puts a little warm blanket on the situation.
Exactly. It is a real thing, though. As we become stressed, we drive up cortisol. And the way that we can bring that back down is by eating and other glucocorticoids. But in general, yeah, your diet and nutrition and everything else is hugely related to recovery, obviously.
You see the leaf blower out there, you're not like, God damn, I need a chicken breast and some broccoli.
Nothing to throw at him if I need. But that's a bigger question. I think metabolism is something I've been digging into a lot lately, because when most people think about metabolism, they think of it's how many calories I burn. Like if I ask them about metabolism, it's how many calories I burn a day. Okay, great. That's just the output, right? So my metabolism, sure, it burns X amount of calories per day. But when we step back and we think, what is metabolism really doing? And at the zoomed out 10,000-foot view, metabolism is taking the foods that you eat and turning them into you. That's literally what it's doing. It sounds funny, but it's true. So when we eat food, right, we have...
You are what you eat.
You are, but you have macromolecules, right? You've got your carbohydrates, your proteins, your fat, nucleic acids in foods.
Yeah.
And you have them in your body. Well, how does it get from an apple and a steak or whatever into my muscle and my glycogen? Metabolism. Metabolism is taking the foods, breaking them down into amino acids and glucose and this whole process of breaking things down, and then it's rebuilding them into you. It's your protein you eat is what becomes protein in your muscle. That's how it works. And so in that whole process, there's a lot of room for variation. There's a lot of room for it to go really well and a lot of room for it to go really poorly and be very inefficient. So the foods that you eat are obviously the starting point, and foods that are higher quality in nutrients and density and have different amino acid spectrums and different amounts of different sugars and carbohydrates. All these things will impact, obviously, how the body breaks them down and turns them into proteins that make up your body. But it starts with this understanding, again, that the foods we eat have to go through metabolism to become us. And that's where sleep and training, nutrition, all of this impacts our metabolism's ability to do that. So if I'm eating shittier foods, it's harder for my body to convert those, or it takes more work, or we end up with less vitamins and minerals along the way. We end up with more bottlenecks, whatever, then our recovery is worse because we have more processing to do to get to the end result of what we're trying to get to, which is proteins. And I've been doing a test called metabolomics lately with a lot of people.
Metabolomics.
So metabolomics looks at the energy producing process. It looks at how your body breaks down and digests carbs, proteins, and fats, and then how it turns those into energy through the different processes, right?
Your body specifically?
Yeah, each person, right?
Wow.
So you can do urine and or blood and plasma, and when I do is just urine, but it looks at basically how your body metabolizes foods and then how it then turns those foods into, takes them, turns into energy, and then use the energy to build building blocks of us. It's really fascinating because what you find basically is different people based on genetics and environment and diet, everything else, have different bottlenecks, I guess you would say. So if you're lacking certain nutrients, this process might take a lot longer, it'd be a lot slower. If your body's naturally digested towards or naturally shifted towards protein only or carbs or fats, and you just eat a lot of one particular macronutrient, you'll be probably pretty good at digesting that, but probably not as good at the other side of things. So it's really fascinating to kind of go down this rabbit hole of seeing how each one of our metabolisms differs in our ability to process foods and then use those foods effectively to build new proteins in our body. The biggest thing I realized when I started doing this is my food spectrum is not very wide. I tend to be personally, I tend to not be very varied in my foods. I like to be habitual. I eat the same shit. I go in the same pattern. So I'm very patterned in how I do things. It allows me to control things, but I realize I'm lacking probably in some nutrients, a lot of antioxidants. I don't like vegetables as much as probably I should. And I miss out in certain food groups as a result of that. And I see very specific patterns in myself that I'm lacking in. Somebody else who eats a ton of fruits and vegetables, or eats a lot of fibrous foods that I don't necessarily get in some senses, they're going to have very different patterns of what their metabolism looks like. So it's been really fascinating because we can take that metabolomics test and we can figure out A, which foods should you probably eat more of, B, which foods should you probably eat less of, and then C, can we supplement some things if you're not going to eat those foods? Because in a perfect world, you wouldn't need supplements, right? You'd get all the foods you need from your diet. Most people don't live in that perfect world. And so supplements can fill in that gap. But if you don't know which ones to take, you're just kind of throwing shit at a wall and hoping it meets a need. But you might not need that supplement.